Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, delighted that Hugh MacDonald and Gordon Parks have joined me on the programme. If you like what you're watching and listening to, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to join the football family, and if you download the app, you'll get all the breaking news at your fingertips. Lots to discuss on today's programme. Of course, we threw it up in the air over the last couple of weeks on the Journos about great sides that we'd watched, what was going to be the best club side ever. I just dropped a text out to you guys, knowing full well where your plan of attack was coming, and then Gordon obviously threw a spanner in the works, which I cannot wait for you to hear. So who wants to take the first step forward? I'm quite happy to bide my time. Hugh, do you want to put forward who you think the best club side ever? And before you say, I have said here, it's difficult to judge teams from different eras based on professionalism, technique, fitness, the way the game's gone, but honours and dominance must be considered, and of course their impact on the game.
Yeah, I think so, and I think my team would tick all the boxes here. I go for the AC Milan, Sacchi's AC Milan team. For a variety of reasons. One, the dominance, but two, they had a manager that kind of developed the pressing game, shall we say, and three, I think the individuals in the team. If you look at any great team, of course, it has to be made up of great individuals. And I just look at the AC Milan team, and the back four is Tassotti, Baresi, Costa Curta and Maldini, and I think that's as good a back four as you can get. And then if you throw in Rijkaard, Donadoni, Albertini, Ancelotti, Gullit and Van Basten, I think that's a good mob.
Yeah, it is a good team actually. I was looking at the two teams and the way they lined up on the two occasions when they won back-to-back European Cups. And I've picked the team that dismantled Steaua Bucharest because that's Galli in goal, Tassotti, Baresi, Costa Curta, Maldini, Colombo, Rijkaard, Ancelotti, Donadoni, and then Gullit and Van Basten. I think Albertini came a wee bit later, didn't he? But as far as that side is concerned, the football they played, magnificent. Van Basten and Gullit shared 2 goals each in the final. But over and above that, at that time, you looked at Inter and they had the 3 Germans and the 3 Dutch players were there for AC Milan. And it was at a time, Gordon, where when you were a kid, you actually got up to watch Channel 4 to catch the Scudetto, because it was great to watch.
Matthias, Klinsmann and Bremer.
Yeah.
So again, it's relative to the generation that you're in, and I think even to be fair, that team that you mentioned, I'm available to be persuaded when you're talking about the quality there. Certainly, it's not a team that I picked initially, but it's hard to argue against that kind of absolute creme de la creme.
Yeah, and he wasn't actually a great player, or I think he was a teacher, Sacchi.
Sacchi, yeah, but Sacchi was great, and he was slaughtered for that. And his great saying was, he says, "You don't have to be a horse to be a great jockey." So that was his view. Sacchi came from very humble beginnings and made his way as a coach and down the league, Series C and then B and then T, and he had to overcome a lot of that snobbery.
Yes.
But he was the man that signed the Dutchman, so he knew what he wanted. And it's amazing when you look at that team that there's people in that team that are not the best 3 or 4 players in that team. Like Ancelotti was an absolutely terrific player. I mean, Ancelotti's one of these guys that if you said, taking in his whole football, if you took in the whole football history like Cruyff, if you took him as a player and as a coach, he's in the pantheon, Ancelotti,
Yeah, I'm going to listen to everybody's argument on their team, and then we'll throw
tell
in
us we're wrong.
Well, no, throw in a few other teams along the way. If you and I can batter it out. There are how many world-class players do you think there are in that side?
If you talk about world-class as in their contenders for the greatest team of all time, if you had to consider them to be in the greatest team, three of the defenders certainly. You've got to say the greatest team of all time. You've got to consider Maldini, Baresi, Kortakuta, and I think up front you've got to consider both Van Basten and Gullit, and take the rest. But I mean, there's 5 or 6, the greatest team of all time.
Is it fair to say that that's one of the first real cosmopolitan teams? Because it wasn't really the way. The teams that we're going to discuss, certainly mine, you're talking about nationalities congested into the one team.
Well, I would argue, because the first Real Madrid team, the Real Madrid team, which would probably be a contender well before your time, but at the beginning of my time, they had Stéfano, who famously played for 3 countries, Colombia, Argentina and Spain. And they had Puskas, of course, who was the Hungarian. So they had and a Brazilian in the team as well.
But it wasn't the way. It wasn't orchestrated. Which is it wasn't. It was more circumstances of what was happening in countries.
Yeah, and Real Madrid would be one of the few teams that would have the money to do that. I mean, famously, if you don't have to just look at Celtic winning European Cup, 11 Scots and that, but Ajax did the same with, a Dutchman, Bayern Munich. I'm trying to think. They'd be all Germans as well, so certainly. But the interesting thing about AC Milan, I think, as well, is all through my life, Serie A would be considered probably, for a long time, the best league in the world. You could see it, like Dennis Law went there in the 60s, Joe Jordan, David, and that was when, Mark Haley. Yeah. Players went to Serie A because that was the best. Oh, you had to be top class. And that was the best league in the world, and now it just isn't.
Well, see, when you watch the coverage in Channel 4, it was an eye-opener because you used to go behind the scenes and you'd sometimes get wee footage of their training sessions and all that, and it showed you the demands they put on them. A lot of power and strength work and all that getting done.
But Maldini was actually monitoring his fat content in the 80s.
That's my point. It was a complete eye-opener, a revelation to see these teams that are at the real top and why they are there.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say to you, which is a word we don't associate with that AC Milan side, although they have 3 world-class fullbacks in it, you didn't associate Catenaccio with it. No. Because they had flair.
They had flair, and it was a high press. It was the first team that really did high press, and they banked on their defenders. Yeah. They thought that, they said our defenders are better than any attackers, so you need the ball in behind. Baresi wasn't the quickest either, no. But he was sharp. He was the best defender. But
Donadoni was a good player.
They were full of good players. Yeah. Albertini comes along later and a terrific player as well. It's funny how just when you look at that team, I honestly think, best team in the world ever, there's 5 contenders for it.
Yeah, the other thing about dismantling Steaua Bucharest at that time is Steaua Bucharest had Petrescu, Hagi, Lakatos. They were a good side.
Well, Romania was a side that could go the distance in World Cups at that time.
Yeah, it's physical specimens, as you stood in the mind's eye. Maldini, Gullit, thoroughbred, Van Basten, Donadoni even, Rijkaards. You're looking at guys that are absolutely thoroughbred athletes.
Yep.
And that was also a kind of trend of that Italian kind of era.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Listen, it's a fantastic argument from you, Hugh, and obviously from my point of view, I'm looking at it, I'm saying, great point, great world-class players. Well, no buts, because you put it forward, and I think we are in agreement that they're a great side. Certainly one of the finest sides, certainly top 5, if not the greatest, which will bow to your superiority if indeed you win the argument. Parsley, if you win the argument, I'm chucking it.
Because already lost the argument, but go on.
I don't think you grasped it, but there's a good argument on the basis that English clubs were barred from Europe at the time.
Yep.
So your greatest ever club side, you think, is?
From purely a spectacle and an entertainment value, I can't see past the Liverpool team that contained the likes of Kenny Dalglish, Hansen, Grobbelaar, Souness, Ian Rush, John Barnes, Peter Beardsley.
I agree with you. It's a great team.
Again, I just remember the goals they scored, the way they did, the variety.
Yeah, but you're taking a collective. You're taking a collective of players over a broad...
Not really. I think we can fit most of those.
Beardsley was signed at a time when Dalglish was the manager, building the side, you know. But you're looking... we're really looking... I think it's a good argument on the basis of, I'll give you the Liverpool side.
Okay.
I'll give you the Liverpool side.
Because I can extend that a wee bit.
Because we could...
There's a stat about John Wark which blows my mind. He was at Liverpool, and his scoring ratio was sort. I can't remember the actual specifics.
14 goals.
Was it?
In European competition.
Right.
Yeah.
That to me astounds me, because you don't really. He's not a synonymous figure. Doing well in Europe with Liverpool, but his stats are phenomenal.
Yeah. So, and with that in mind, and you've mentioned John Wark, who was obviously part of that great Ipswich Town side as well. So,
can I point out something about that Liverpool way at the time? A lot of Liverpool English football was back to front. You look at the way they played, the big striker and all that, the knockdown. There wasn't a lot of method to it. A lot was that kind of robust. Liverpool built the game properly, and they linked things through, and they had such class and finesse.
yeah. If you're talking about the Liverpool side that contained John Wark, I don't think it's the greatest Liverpool side ever.
Yeah.
But it is a right good side. It's Grobbelaar, it's Phil Neal, it's Mark Lawrenson, it's Alan Hansen, Jim Beglin, and then it's Nicol, Whelan, Wark, Walsh in the midfield with Dalglish and Rush up front.
Decent.
Good side, Hugh.
Aye.
They lost to Juventus in the final. It was
a dud
Heysel.
final,
It was a crazy period where I think the rightly the most concern was for Juventus fans who had lost their life when that wall collapsed. But as far as the side itself is concerned, top drawer, yes. World class. How many players on that side? I've got a better Liverpool side than that. That could lay claim to being one of the greatest ever sides, you know.
The Liverpool side that comes, I mean, the Liverpool side that won the European Cup's terrific. But the one I would throw in as well, which people tend to forget about, is the Dalglish side as manager. And Peter, you being a big great Liverpool fan, will remember when they beat Nottingham Forest 5-1.
Yeah, Tom Finney said they were the greatest side he'd seen.
That was a remarkable performance. And what I liked about that was it showed how Dalglish was as a. I think Dalglish is one of the great player recruiters in the world. I think his record at recruiting players. I mean, people say, "Oh, Blackburn won just bought the title." Well, fair enough. That's what teams tend to do. But he bought players for Blackburn who won a title for him. Then they sold them all on for a profit.
Tim Sherwood, guys like that.
Yeah.
Jim Sherwood, the fullback Lasso.
Who's the left winger?
Wilcox in the left wing, and Sutton and Shearer.
Kevin Gallagher went to Newcastle.
I mean, my Liverpool team, my favourite one was that 5-1 team because just simply it had Barnes in it.
Yeah, I mean, the 1989-1990 season, Grobbelaar, Burrows, Hussein, I wasn't a big fan of Hussein, I thought he was weak. Hansen, Venison, Nicol, Mulby, McMahon, Barnes, Rush and Rosenthal with Ray Houghton and Gillespie. It was just a flavour of it. But if you look at that side, they had... Still, Rushy was in it. He'd come back from Italy. You had Beardsley coming in, Venison as well.
McManaman.
And McManaman was later, just a little later on.
Oh, sorry, it was McMahon.
But McMahon,
sorry,
who was as hard as nails. It's not a bad side, Partsy. I think if people were looking in Liverpool, aficionados of a certain vintage were looking, they'd say to themselves, well, what does it have to contain?
Can I just tell a quick story about Steve McMahon was the Swindon manager.
Yeah.
And he was looking for somebody to go in and be aggressive. And he went to Albion Rovers, and the wee boy, Lee, middle of the park, young boy. He turned up at Clifton Hill to watch him play. And the boy gets sent off after 10 seconds. And Steve McMahon went back to the airport, sign him. Exactly what I'm looking for.
Is that right?
Aye.
On 10 seconds?
Lee.
No.
Can't remember his name.
No.
Oh. So not really a story then, just the start of a story and no ending.
It'll come back to me.
Yeah, I'll come back to you midway through the second half of the show. Keegan was in the 77 side. the team,
Collins, Lee Collins.
Lee Collins.
We had a decent career in England after that.
Yeah. Keegan in the side that beat Borussia Mönchengladbach. I tend to look at the side that beat Bruges.
Yeah.
I'll give you that as Clements in goal, Neil, Thompson, Hansen and Emlyn Hughes. Case, hard as nails. McDermott, Souness, Ray Kennedy, who was a wonderful player. And then it had Dalgleish and Fairclough up front. Now, David Fairclough was tagged as a super sub in that side, but it's up there.
That's a good side.
You know, and even the 84, you know, it's hard to look past Dalglish and Rush.
Aye.
You know, they were absolutely sensational as a pairing.
The Dalglish and Rush is, and they were different from, as Gordon was saying, that the Liverpool way was usually a Toshak and Keegan thing, you know, a big Toshak wins it. And this was Dalglish dropping really deep at times and just feeding Rush in. And by the way, scoring goals himself. I think Dalglish and Rush go down, not just in Liverpool history, but in world history as one of the great pairings.
Yeah.
Just world history.
And with that side there, you know, I'd take Fairclough out of the equation. The 84 side that beat Roma, obviously they might have been playing Dundee United had it not been for a dodgy ref. But the side that eventually beat Roma, is this a better side? Grobbelaar in goal, Neil, Lawrenson, Hansen and Kennedy, Johnston, Lee, Souness, Whelan, Dalglish and Rush.
That's what I...
Is that better than the 78, yeah?
I think so.
Yeah, well, I'm bowing to...
By the way, there's not much...
Dalglish and Rush that really kind of sways it for me.
Aye, I mean, I think any team with Dalglish and Rush in it is a better team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, you know, you've got Johnston, Lee... Whelan was a great player as well.
All these guys were good. Craig Johnson was a terrific player. I mean, he was the prototype of what we now call the box-to-box midfielder. You know, fit as a fiddle, good technically, great commitment to the game. There's not in that back four strong. I mean, I think
you've got four, possibly 5 world-class players there.
Who they were deletion and who else in the team?
I'm saying I think Hansen's world-class.
Yes.
Souness.
Yep.
Dalglish.
Definitely.
Rush.
Definitely.
There's 4. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say Lawrenson, but there's definitely 4. And your team of AC Milan had 5.
I would think 5.
Yeah, but are you having that Liverpool side?
That for me is a pick of the bunch.
77 to 84, Liverpool and Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa dominated European football.
Manchester United, have they formulated a team that we can really put...
Well, we are going to mention it, but I'm giving you your chance to put your...
Oh, he's won the argument. Do you know what? Sometimes... He did text me at half 8 this morning.
Yeah, I haven't given you my team.
Wait, hang on a minute. See when you give me that absolute creme de la creme, the names, it's hard to see beyond that.
Yeah. Oh, you swayed towards AC Milan?
I think so.
Wow, that's interesting.
Peter won't be. Peter's...
No, I can't wait to hear it.
Well, I'll tell you, the best... There is a really, really strong argument for 2 sides out with the one that I was going for, because I think you have to deal with the other thing, which I think we are very insular, and I'm talking about Europe as a continent, is the fact that we think the whole world revolves around European
Absolutely,
football,
yep.
which is a nonsense. And of course, people will say, well, you're quoting Brazilian sides. What have they ever done? Well, they kept winning World Cups. And you don't win World Cups unless you've got a great pool of players to pick from. So, and there was a period where I think Santos could lay claim to it. I think we've got to acknowledge them. And there's also a real strong claim for a team that had the biggest impact, I think, on a lot of people in our area, which is the Real Madrid side. The ultimate maybe was 1960. Some people would say earlier if you were watching Real Madrid at that particular time. But 1960s team that battered Eintracht Frankfurt we'll talk about, because it had an impact on so many people. Sir Alex Ferguson said he was there, he was at the game. People watched it and thought, wow, this team was great. If anything, there are certain criticisms which you'll never believe will come from that side. But the team that I've picked, that I think is the greatest ever side, is Barcelona. I think it's Pep Guardiola's Tiki-Taka was the phrase that they used to describe his team. I couldn't quite work out, again, and I'm open to the debate on this, the reason why I think they're not pioneers of a certain type of football, because there's teams before them that have played that lovely triangle style football and played it really well. But they have so many world-class players in the side. I couldn't pick between the first one, which was the team that dismantled Manchester United 3-1 in 2011, and I give you Valdez in goal, Alves, Mascherano, Piqué and Abidal, Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, David Villa, Messi and Pedro. It's a good side. It's a fantastic side, but the one that beat United in Rome, which I was at that game, Valdez, Puyol, Toure, Piqué, Silvinho, Xavi, Busquets, Iniesta, Messi, Henry and Eto'o. You know, I mean, you're talking a lot of world-class players, more than Milan in my mind, are in that side. And
I would say
Toure's a world-class.
You're talking about, I don't know if you're talking about gets in the best team of all time.
Well, he's not going to get in.
I don't think he's in
the best team of all time, but he's certainly world-class.
Aye, but I'm talking about, my definition of world-class for Milan was you get in the best team of all time.
Yeah.
That's a high bar. I don't think Toure meets that.
Do you think overall the way they played football, the way they dismantled sides, the fact that they had a man who was scoring regularly 50 goals a season?
I mean, because I'm just being really picky here, right?
Yes.
That's a terrific side.
Yes.
And see, you talked about that side, when you're starting to quibble over Toure's and all that, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, the bar's that high. I mean, because in that side, Messi is a credible contender for greatest player ever. Busquets, astonishing. One of the great moments in my life was going to see Germany v Spain and Al Bayat at the World Cup and just watching Busquets, who, by the way, was at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Just watched him. You know, you pick a player just to watch. And he was just like absolutely sensational.
Yes.
You know, so Busquets definitely. You're going to argue with Xavi and Iniesta? I think not. And then you get to Henry and Eto'o. Come on. I mean, that is a great side.
I think the other thing about them, Partray, is the fact that, AC Milan, fantastic, dominated Serie A, back-to-back European Cups. But this is a side that, people were raving about because they could not believe week in, week out, they were dismantling. I mean, they were dismantling Real Madrid in their own backyard. They were also going to European games and battering teams, and people were raving about them every week. And by the way, the stats alone for Messi, you're thinking, in Spanish football, 50 goals. And it was like a tit for tat between him and Ronaldo, who was going to score the most goals. If Ronaldo scored 3 one week, he'd score 4 the next. Yeah. It was outrageous.
There was a ground shift from that Barcelona team introduced pass you to death, the pass you to death. But there was also PlayStation came onto the market around about that kind of time as well.
Yeah.
And it was similar. I mean, it was based on that kind of keeping the ball and playing it. I just remember the immaculate pitch they were playing on and really space they made for each other. Football changed then for me.
The rule changes suited them as well.
It impacted everybody, though. I mean, I remember Rio Ferdinand saying to you, in the games in the European Cup final, there was a point where he looked over to Nemanja Vidic and thought, who are you picking up? He's dropped off, he's gone there, left backs moved forward, they're all on the overlap. I mean, Ruffy and I were in the new camp one night when basically Eric Abidal overlapped Kieran Tierney, and Abidal was the left back who was on the opposite end of the pitch overlapping Kieran Tierney. And the two of us looked at each other, this was at 5-0. And you're thinking to yourself, this side's outrageous.
But the other thing I think that was just been forgotten about is the rule changes, the way the games are refereed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if you look at that Barcelona team, Busquets was tall, and there's a lot of players that were very, very small.
Yes.
And I think the Milan team would have got away with a lot against them.
Well, the Barcelona team that contained Diego Maradona.
Yeah.
Look at the game then.
I know.
And so quickly, ahead of that, you had this immaculate, technique-based,
beautiful pitches.
Fantastic. And you're right, there's no tolerance for the challenges that your Italian team would have been put in.
I mean, you look at the way Maradona played in La Liga or Maradona played in World Cups and see the treatment he got. It would have killed Messi. Messi just physically and it's a good. I'm saying it's a good thing that the laws changed, the tackle for behind, more stringent with yellow cards. Don't get away with one, etc., etc. But that would be the only. If
Piqué, Toure, Henry, and Eto'o are tall.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing I would say, I mean, listen, that is the other aspect of it. The only thing, I know you don't drink, but you and I would have, you know, a wee chaser just to settle this argument. I genuinely look at the two teams and I think what a matchup it would be. What a matchup, AC Milan against Barcelona. What a game that would be.
I think so, but I would like the toss-up to see what rules they played under.
Yeah.
Critical.
Does that determine the outcome of the game for you?
I think it does, because if Maldini is allowed, if Maldini, Baresi and Costa Curta, never mind Tassotti, are allowed to tackle the way they were allowed to tackle in the early 90s, you could see some injuries. You could see some.
You don't think that's the crux of the matter? It's a difficult thing to boil down this argument, because generations played in a different way, and you're right, the rules are different.
And players
were different.
And players are better now than they were, because they're fitter. They're, you know, they've got better sports science. It's a way. It's like saying, you know, Zatopek was the best athlete of all time. Well, a guy who shirts and Harriers at the moment would be competitive against Zatopek because of the way that the human body has changed in sports science. I wouldn't be confident of AC Milan beating that Barcelona side, no. No.
It's a good argument. It's a great argument. It's a good argument also for the Liverpool side. I think they come up short.
You could put that Barcelona team to music. It was poetry in motion. The way that they dismantled teams, I mean, they wore you down. You just kept the ball. They took your tongue out and then they just went for you.
You see Fergie, I mean, Fergie said about after when they get beat at Wembley, he says, they destroyed us. I mean,
can I change my horse now?
Yeah, you change your horse, because
I'm going with that Barcelona team.
I know the reason I'm saying that is because you're talking about Fergie there, right? Fergie, when asked about it, he said, I should have put Ji-Sung Park on Messi and brought him on earlier. On the team that they beat 2-0 that I was at in Rome, it was Van der Sar, O'Shea, Ferdinand, Vidic and Evra, Anderson, Carrick, Giggs, Rooney, Park and Ronaldo. And the one that he was talking about that took on Barcelona and Pep's side won by 3-1 in 2011. Van der Sar, Fabio, Ferdinand, Vidic, Evra, Valencia, Carrick, Giggs, Park, Rooney and Hernandez. They were short, you know, and they just, you know, even if he'd put a man marking job on one of them, I thought it wouldn't have mattered because they were so good. I personally liked Villa. I thought.
I was talking about David Villa to my son the other week. It's almost like become a forgotten figure. You know what I mean. He's not. If you think of Barcelona, everybody's going to go Puskas, Xavi, Iniesta, obviously Messi. But Villa that day was sensational.
Absolutely. If I was picking my favourite,
another Munchkin as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If I was picking my favourite Barcelona side, it would be that side. It would be Valdez, Alves, Mascherano, Piqué, Abidal, Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta.
So no Puyol.
Villa, Messi, and Pedro. I think at that point there must have been an injury to him. You know, but I think Puyol would probably replace Mascherano in my mind. I'm only looking at it from.
Well, Mascherano was so good. He was a holding midfielder that could play centre back.
I think it would be Piqué and Puyol there. Yeah, he was still playing at that point. It can only been for an injury in the final, but they were absolutely sensational. Now,
see the only counter argument to in the most recent, it's a Manchester City team of the last few years with that kind of relentless ability to absolutely drag you about the pitch and pass you to death.
Yes,
I don't think they've won enough in Europe though.
I know, but I'm just trying to think of like for like. You know, there's
if anything. I think there are holes all over that Man City side that are not comparable with the Barcelona team that he had. I don't see somebody that, you know, in that side. De Bruyne was magnificent at passing. You know, the team that won the Champions League, you know, the difference that got him over the line, Erling Haaland. But, you know, Bernardo, David Silva is probably the one player that you look at over the last 10 years that if you talk to Manchester City fans,
Yeah, I agree with that.
they loved him. He was just a
There
magician.
was a guy, the Manchester City historian, who became a director of the club, and I was speaking to him at the Hall of Fame years ago, and I said to him, how good is David Silva? And he gave a great answer. He says, he's nearly as good as Bobby Johnson. Which is a tremendous answer because Bobby Johnson, of course, was the Hibs famous five.
Yeah.
And he went to Manchester City. And this Manchester City historian said, you know, it just shows you the way years have passed, but Bobby Johnson was one of the greatest Manchester City. He says, I've seen them all.
Yeah.
He said, and he says, I put him up with David Silva, you know.
And this is why it's great having you on the programme, Hugh, because there are lots of people who, of different generations, who look and go, don't be so silly. And, you know, you haven't mentioned this side or that side, so I'm going to mention a few that we can talk about that I think are worthy of it. And 5 European Cups consecutively is no mean feat.
They're great. They're the aristocrats.
Yeah, I've picked Real Madrid of the 1960 side, which is Dominguez, Marquitos, Santa Maria, Pachin, Zaraga, Vidal, Canário, Del Sol, Puskas, Gento and Di Stefano. 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, scream out at me as being absolutely world class in Santa Maria, Puskas, Di Stefano and Gento.
Del Sol would be a contender for me as well. Beautiful midfield player.
So you're looking at a side that, you know, was hell for leather on attack. They probably, the one thing that I got, and I was looking and researching them and getting various assessments of them overall, was they weren't really a team that would graft and worried about, you know, getting the ball back quickly, and they certainly weren't worried about the fact that a team scored against them, because the attitude of most of the books that I read on them were, you score 3, we'll score 4.
They were the first. They were the team that did that. And remember, there was a lot of kind of egos in that team. Most spectacularly, Di Stefano and Puskas up front, who were vying at the time for being best player in the world.
Well, Di Stefano scored 3 in the final. Puskas scored 4.
And there was at one time there was a seeming reluctance, shall we say, of either to pass that. I mean, it was overcome. The interesting thing about that is watching football through the years, and I go down these rabbit holes all the time, and because that YouTube's just tremendous for it. You can just type in something, you get it. That was walking football back then.
Yeah.
Look at the 1960 game. There's plenty of highlights on YouTube, and there's some great technique, but it bears little or no resemblance to what football is now. Yes. Whereas if you go into even Celtic in 67, Ajax in the early 70s, I think bears a strong resemblance to what it is, because it's very physical, quick, athletic.
Well, begs the question, can you integrate one of those great players that you just mentioned there into something more modern, and would they be able to fit?
I think they would, yeah. I think great is great.
Yeah, I think Gento, Di Stefano and Puskas would. I'm not sure Puskas, in the latter part of his career, maybe in that 60 side, would have got past Pep Guardiola's body mass index. Because, you know, when you think of Puskas and when he scores at Wembley against England, the drag back, I mean, he's absolutely rock solid. As he got on, he was still great, but he was carrying. You know, he was carrying a bit of weight, but what a wonderful player. And with that in mind, I think they're worthy of a mention. Are they the greatest ever club side of all time? Of the generations that would be sitting around in a Spanish pub, there'd probably be a few wise old Spanish men saying, magnificent, Di Stefano was out there on his own. So I'm going to put to you now a team that, when I was growing up as a kid, Partsy, you couldn't go to Greaves and get any European shirt you wanted. You had to get your mum to make it and try and get you as close to the Ajax strip as you possibly could. It was my favourite strip of the time. He was, for me, when I think of 2 or 3 world-class players before the Messis and Ronaldos, Cruyff was everything. He could talk the game, he could play the game.
Did you know he was going to say this?
He was fantastic. I mean, he was a genius. And he also was, as you rightly, I think you gave me his book. When I read up on him, he could back it up. And he was of the opinion that if things weren't going the way he thought the club should be run, he was off ski. and he was, hot-headed at times, opinionated. But I give you, in that side, Stu, Surbier, Hulshoff, Blankenberg, Kroll, Neskins, Hahn, Muren, Rep, Cruyff and Kaiser. They won it 3 consecutive years.
I saw them at Hampden.
And they were magnificent.
Saw them at
Ajax.
Saw them at Hampden when the Celtic beat them 1-0 at Hampden, a good Celtic team. And but I think Ajax won 3-0 in Amsterdam. But the thing about that 1-0 game was I came out of that, we knew then about Cruyff and Kroll and that. Surby was my man that night.
Yeah.
He was playing fullback and I'd never seen anything quite like it in terms of athleticism, pace, technique. He was playing like a winger, fullback. I mean, it was like years beyond. And then he was slipping in behind his own defence to sweep. And I thought Surby was just top notch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great Surby. I think there's a great story about Bobby Lennox story. They were on holiday and Mrs. Lennox had
Kroll.
It was at Kroll, sorry.
Yes, it's a great story.
Where Mrs. Lennox was asked what the necklace is, and she says it's the European Cup medal, and unbeknownst to her, she's talked to Mrs. Kroll, who's probably said, I've got 3 of them. But there's a nice story when you're talking about making the Ajax shirt. One day in my house, my mate came over with his brother to watch Celtic v Rangers. These were the days when not everybody had Sky, but I had to have Sky because I was fit with mad. And my mate would phone and say, any chance of coming around and watch the Celtic Rangers? Come around. I bring my brother. Of course you can bring your brother. So the brother was sitting on the couch and my son was sitting watching the telly. And I said to the brother, who's the best player you played with? And the brother said, Van Basten. And my son gets up. He's at it. Of course, the guy I was talking to was Ali Dick, who played in the front 3 of Van Basten, Bergkamp and Dick.
Yeah.
And my son never believed it till Ali came round the next night and said, there's some old Ajax strips for young Alistair, my Alistair.
Yeah.
So my Alistair has got a genuine
That's a brilliant story.
match worn.
It is. And you would never, ever give it away. It's absolutely fantastic.
You know the great thing about talking about these kind of nostalgic, brilliant teams is they all have to formulate over time.
Aye.
Like Frankenstein's monster was the PSG, Neymar, Messi, Mbappe. It doesn't work. You have to actually have a manager who's prepared to get the time. The Aberdeen team that won the Cup Winners' Cup, time blending and get it, and it comes to the boil. It does take time.
Absolutely. And you have to have a formation and a style and a way of playing. And that brings me nicely to Bayern Munich.
Yep.
Because they won it.
Who was the guy that played with Real Madrid, the German?
Schuster. Bernd Schuster.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he played with the side, I think, with Laurie Cunningham. They lost in the final to Liverpool.
Yeah, aye.
And that was a good side as well. In fact, I wonder if I've got the details here of that Liverpool side that played them. They did lose. Laurie Cunningham played in that side, who I thought was a wonderful player.
Beautiful player.
Anyway, I digress. Bayern Munich. Meyer, Hansen, Schwarzenbeck, Beckenbauer, Horstmann, Dürnberger, Roth, Kappelmann, Hoeneß, Rummenigge and Müller. Now, I give you, 4 or 5 world-class players?
I would take 4 there right away.
Yeah.
I'd take Beckenbauer.
Meyer?
Maybe Meyer.
Yeah.
But definitely Beckenbauer in the front 3.
Yeah. Easily. Even Roth has a great record of scoring.
Well, Roth scored in... Roth was the man that did for Rangers, I think, in 67.
Yes.
And he certainly did for St Etienne in the European Cup final.
Yeah. By the way, I just thought I'd tell you that the team that Real Madrid, and I should have mentioned it, the team that Real Madrid beat Eintracht Frankfurt, they defeated Rangers in the semi-final 12-4.
Right.
I just thought I'd put it into perspective. In 1960, they beat Rangers 12-4 in aggregate.
Right.
I think it was 6-1, 6-3.
I don't know if you know this, but there's a trend forming here. All the better players and the better teams are from a different bygone age. Listen to you used to again.
Well, technically, I mean...
Remember talking about Rangers, remember this Bayern Munich team before they went on the run, were beaten by Rangers in the European Cup Winners' Cup semi-final.
Yeah, which was fantastic.
I mean, that just
I
shows
think
you where Scottish football.
Young Derek Parlane actually played in
He did. And I think Sandy Jardine scored, did he not, in that one? Your pal.
Yeah.
That was a very, very good Rangers team.
Yeah, and by the way, most of that side there was the team that would eventually win the World Cup in '74.
Right.
So that is a right good side as well.
Oh, aye.
And Bayern Munich, to win it 3 in the trot, Beckenbauer was just outrageous. He is Hugh. I think when you're looking, you're saying to yourself, the argument over AC Milan, he is one of the contenders to say, listen, you're going to Costa Curta, you're going to have to drop out here.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
The only thing that saves maybe Costa Curta is you've got to keep Baresi in the team, or is Baresi and Beckenbauer too similar?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
It's a great shout.
That might, but Beckenbauer was absolutely sensational. And he's another one like Cruyff, who went on to be, I mean, he won a World Cup as the manager of Germany, so he went on to have a decent coaching career, and he had much of Cruyff's, and I like this, I don't say this in a critical way, much of Cruyff's rightful arrogance.
Yeah.
They knew what they were, they knew what they were about.
Before we decide, I've got to give worthy mentions to a few sides.
Right.
Manchester United, 1999,
Right.
treble-winning side. Schmeichel, Neville, Johnson and Stam and Irwin. Irwin was a great player. Giggs, Beckham, Butt and Blomqvist, which not many people would have thought about. York and Cole with Sheringham and Cole, Sheringham and Solskjaer coming on as subs as well.
I remember the two best midfielders in that team are suspended.
Exactly, and
Scholes and
and
Keane.
And you're also in a situation where they have the treble. They win the FA Cup, they win the league. They were a magnificent side.
Absolutely magnificent side.
Yeah.
If you look at the history of Manchester United, it's a club dripping with honours and glamour, etc. The midfield four of Beckham, Keane, Scholes and Giggs is almost impenetrable.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, might bring in Duncan Edwards because of how great he was in the 50s, but that four is just like...
Am I doing a disservice to the 68 side by mentioning the 99 side?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Because if you're talking about world-class players, you've got to remember 68 side, do you put Law in it or not? Because he was injured when they won the European Cup.
Yeah.
But say you put Law into that team, because he was central. Off the top of my head, going through that team, I think you're talking about 3 world-class players. Four. Law, Charlton and Best, obviously. And I might put Crerand in there.
Yeah, so there's 4, but I think they were a wonderful side, certainly. And again, I'm only picking the team that played in the Champions League, but we're talking about a side overall in that season.
The side overall in that season were a sensational team.
Yeah, we've mentioned Manchester United. I think you've got to mention Celtic of '67.
Yep.
If only for the fact, partially, that they won everything they went into. I mean, they were just outrageous. And I found a quote. Now, again, as you scroll the internet and cross-reference things non-stop about various things, I found a quote which was from Tarcisio Burnic.
The fullback.
After the game. And he was interviewed regarding the 67. He says, "We just knew even after 15 minutes that we were not going to keep them out. They were first to every ball. They just hammered us in every area of the pitch. It was a miracle that we were still 1-0 up at half-time. Sometimes in those situations, with each minute that passes, your confidence increases and you start to believe. Not on that day. Even in the dressing room at half-time, we looked at each other and we knew that we were doomed. I remember at one point, Armando Picci turned to the goalkeeper and said, Giuliano, let it go, just let it go. It's pointless. Sooner or later, they'll get the winner. I never thought I would hear those words. I never imagined my captain would tell our keeper to throw in the towel, but that only shows how destroyed we were at that point. It's as if we didn't want to prolong the agony." And I thought, what a quote that is, because if you look back, and the whole world's obsessed by stats now, if you look back at that final, it's the most one-sided Champions League final I've ever seen.
The interesting thing about that final as well, it was a turning in the road as well, Peter. It was a crossroads. Football was at a crossroads then. Herrera was the best manager in the world. Everybody thought Heleno Herrera. His Catenaccio system has been so successful, and it was looked upon, if you want to win, Serie A, best league in the world. If you want to win European Cup, best club competition in the world, you've got to be a defensive side. You've got to have be Catenaccio or come up with a variation on Catenaccio. And Steen and Celtic blew that away. And their significance on particularly Dutch football, if you talk to any of the great innovators in Dutch football and read Brilliant Orange, David Winner's terrific book in the history of Dutch, Dutch people looked at that and went, oh, this is the way to go. This is total football. Because people forget, and I mentioned this last week, one of the goals, see, you're so much younger than me, and you've been brought up with overlapping fullbacks, etc., etc. But it was astonishing in those days for one fullback to be inside the opposition's area and cutting it back for the other fullback to score a goal.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to tell people how astonishing that is now, given that fullbacks start the game sometimes at a halfway line now, you know, when your team's in possession.
And let's not forget that Lisbon Lions side defeated Manchester United 4-1 in the pre-season friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a right good side. I've got to mention a couple before we go into one other little topic that I want to finish on, and we'll get our decision. Santos, 55-68. Now, this side at one point had 9 World Cup winners.
I didn't realise that.
Which is just outrageous. 9 World Cup winners. And if you're talking about, oh, well, people don't know the standard of Brazilian football at the time, well, when they played what you would call now the Club World Cup, they defeated Benfica over the 2 legs. And in Portugal, it was 5-2 to Santos, and Pelé had scored a hat-trick. To have 9 World Cup winners, and at that time, I think we are dismissive sometimes of what we don't see.
Of course we are, aye.
They were magnificent.
That can work the opposite way as well. Like, there's a mythical element to the Celtic team. I wasn't around then, right? They won the European Cup, mythical. You have stories getting told and all that. So you build up a false impression at times. Not just about Celtic, of course, but about other teams. That team is beyond debate. When you mentioned the quality, and again, I would never have known that unless you're telling me.
But they were viewed very much as a Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah, because they would make matches, so they made money.
And they were out touring everywhere, you know. So, and again, a different time and a different style, but certainly a joy to watch. And a young Pelé at 17 years of age, my God, and he's in that side. I'll just give one last mention. It's Taccone, Scirea, Favero, Brio, Cabrini, Tardelli, Bonini, Briaschi, Platini, Rossi and Boniek, Juventus, which is well worth a mention, but I don't think they're anywhere in the final play on this one. I give you Barcelona. Where are you going?
That's interesting. Do you know what? I'm kind of with you, but it's too PlayStation-y for me.
Yes.
The quality you mentioned, the thoroughbred element, the physicality, that team beats the Barcelona team purely by the physical element.
Yeah. Great pub argument, isn't it? It's fantastic.
It's impossible to be it's impossible to be dogmatic. You're going to argue about Pep's Barcelona? I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, I just stick to. I mean, again, my remnants of my argument, which you've successfully shredded, but the remnants of it would be. All depends what rules you were playing under. The other thing, a wee personal thing as well, and I'm going to be looked upon as a kind of football Philistine here. I don't think that Barcelona team would be the team I would, and this sounds terrible, would be the team I wanted to watch.
That's interesting.
Is that right?
See if you could go back.
I would. It's like, see if somebody's put a gun in my head, what kind of team you want to watch, and I'll just do it and see if, I wonder if any of the viewers would agree with me. Do you want to watch, for example, a Pep team or a Klopp team? I want to watch a Klopp team.
If you can go back here and watch one contest in world football history, what would the game be?
I think it would go back to, it would take it out of club. I think it would go back to the 1970 World Cup, and I would just want to watch Brazil. I mean, that takes the club argument, but, but I just want, that's what I want to watch. Physical, powerful, technical players just going for it.
Hugh, that's next week's show. Right. The best World Cup side of all time. Right. So that's next.
That's a teaser for next week.
That's next week.
But that would be.
By the way, next week's show is called Brazil 1970 and the runners and riders. But I mean, it's a great argument. Give us your thoughts, because people of a certain vintage might think Real Madrid.
It's going to do your years as well. I mean, like, I can see. It sounds as if I'm denigrating, but of course I'm not. But it's just like that gut thing. Would I watch Barcelona in their pomp or say a Klopp team in their palm, I'd probably go for a Klopp team. But
Oh, that's open to an argument. I could dedicate a whole show to you on that line alone. Real Madrid, is it a Barcelona? Is it a Liverpool? Give us your thoughts on it in the comment section below, and try and back it up with some reasoning to your decision on your team that you think is the greatest club side of all time. Certainly, we've put our strong arguments here, and you can dissect them, agree or disagree. I hope you enjoyed that little section of the show. To finish, I'm going to just go closer to home on a couple of things I want to get your thoughts on. Managers, they come and go. Some of them are sacked. Some of them decide they've had enough because they've taken a club as far as they can. Most of them are eventually sacked. I mean, that's the the ultimate for you. You get your 3 to 5 years. But when you get a manager like Stuart Kettlewell saying that the abuse that was coming towards his family, and he just thought, enough is enough. I was surprised by his decision. Whether it has a long-term impact on his ability to find another job elsewhere, I would open that up to serious debate. I like him as a person. I think we've had him on the show on a number of occasions. I'm bemused and saddened by the fact that a man, has to resign because of the attitude of some fans who really need to take a long, hard look at themselves in this age in society where they think it's okay to abuse people.
I would like to know the specifics of what this abuse, how it manifested itself, if it's booing at a game, if it's how much depth. Very intense individual. Stuart, well, we all like him, lovely guy, good coach. He's put himself in a position where his temperament will be questioned now, and that's a problem for him in a professional sense. Because coming with the job, which is a privilege, is that inevitable criticism. His team's not been doing well. At the weekend there, it was a catastrophic collapse. You have to own that to a degree, and you own it, and sadly, in football today, with ferocious criticism, and a lot of it can be personal. That's society. So he has to decide, is this the environment for him? Can he cope with that? I suggest he can't. I sympathise with him. Because you don't know how he's shaping up psychologically over the last period. So maybe it's been a battering that he's just had to succumb to. I really do. I think he's a loss. A loss to Motherwell. I think he's a loss to... He's a quality coach. If you speak to people within the game that know him and have worked with him, he's got real ability to go and develop players. He's got an insight into the game that I enjoy, that I like listening to. But professionally, has he cut his own throat by making this choice? I think he possibly has.
The other aspect of it, Hugh, and again, I think Gordon, really puts the key point that's missing from this is, what is the abuse? If the abuse is towards him while his family's listening, that's painful. But my attitude to that is, take your family out of the firing line. Don't let them come to the games. You're doing a job. You're at a job of work. We all get abuse. I don't suddenly go back home to my wife and daughter and say, by the way, I'm getting this abuse, that abuse, that abuse. You do. It's part and parcel of it, even as a journalist, even in everyday life. You get these things. So what degree was it? If it was harsh, if it was painful for his family to bear, take them out of it. You've got a job to do. It's part and parcel of the job.
The abuse level for me, and I can speak this with some authority because of longevity. I'm hurtling towards 70 now. So I've been in the game a long time, 54 years I've been in journalism. And I think it's worse than it's ever been. And I think it's worse than it's ever been because it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere now. Especially if you have to engage in social media, and us, by our jobs, we have to engage with social media. We can't. I don't think it's a position that we can have as journalists not to look at social media. It's almost a dereliction of duty. We have to know what's going on there. So you're getting it all the time, and it can feel relentless, and it can feel overwhelming. Not so much for us, because we're a bit older in the tooth, and we've got techniques to overcome it. So I think it's really difficult for people in the front line now. I think it's because of the relentless nature of it. And I think at any time there comes a decision in life, not just with abuse, but any job or what you say, I want to do this.
But Hugh, you would need to know more, because
Exactly.
there are certain individuals within the game, managers, coaches, players, that go hunting for their own name and how they're getting perceived, what the fan reaction is to it. Stuart sat in the stand at the weekend because he wasn't in the dugout.
Yeah.
From people that were at the game, the abuse was booze, right?
Maybe more.
Possibly, but I would like to know, because, again, we're guessing, but there are people that are addicted to go and finding their own mentions, and they're social media junkies, really.
Yeah, but this is...
Good and bad.
The issue of this, though, Gordon, is what Hugh mentioned there is, I think we are now at that point where it's the worst I've ever experienced.
No doubt.
Not because just of social media, but because of the conduct of presidents, of politicians, of people in society who think it's fair game, not just behind a laptop, but out in the open. That if you get a situation where you are looking at leaders, world leaders, who offer so much vile condemnation and demonisation of individuals, and it's fair game for everybody, then I think, the common man or common woman on the street thinks, well, if they can do it, I can do it, and I can take it to a level where you're just going to have to suck it up.
You can just see it with the referee's situation, whether it be the guy down south that gave the Arsenal penalty, and or Walsh, Nick Walsh this week. They're all over the shop. I can tell you, Peter, see, when I used to go to football every single week, I've been a football obsessive since the decade of the 1950s. See, if people say to me in 60s, 70s, 80s, who the referee was, or, there was no... You might know the odds ref and all that, but there wasn't, the referee's at home or the referee's this and that. But there was no, dedicated sort of vilification of them then. There wasn't. Now referees are now... I mean, if you look in Scotland, when I was young, if I could have named 3 referees bar Tiny Wharton, I'd have got a degree. Now everybody knows the referees from A to Z.
Yeah, and their background.
And what school they went to.
Validation now, and I kind of... you're right. The signal has gone out from people far more important than football to be more than critical, be venomous, be total. We've all suffered from it, right? To be honest with you, I disregard it. So it depends on the makeup of the individual, which worries me about Stuart. I would need to know specifics. Has he seen things online? Has it been verbal? We're not going to reclaim the ground, by the way. We are where we are now when it comes to racial things, when it comes to misogynistic things. The genie's out the bottle. People now have a carte blanche to be able to go and say what they say because they see people at the highest level of power doing it. Football is a microcosm of that, and people think they've got a validation that is abusive to the nth degree.
Well,
you have to live with it now or don't. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's a good point you make. This is a Motherwell side who are 5th in the table. You can go through runs, as Stuart has done before, bad runs where you lose 5, 6, 7 games on the bounce. I don't know what the expectation level is at Motherwell. I don't know whether they suddenly have an expectation of playing a greater standard of football. I don't know whether the expectation of a Motherwell side that should be vying for Europe. I don't know, but Motherwell in 5th place in the top half of the table is good going in my book, and I think he's a huge loss. But I would love to have been a fly in the wall. How hard Motherwell tried to get him to change his mind based on Stuart being at the point where he thought there was no way back. I wonder what level of abuse came. I'd love to know that fact. Maybe that will emerge over the next few weeks, but I think he's a loss to the game, and I think the people who think it's open season for doing anything, being abusive to individuals...
Can I also say this?
I think there's a responsibility on the good, decent people to say the genie at the bottle, they might be out of the bottle, but let's make every effort to get them back in the bottle.
Can I just say, I don't know if you agree with this, right? But nobody gives a kind of... Neil Lennon's a great example. Neil Lennon spoke about his psychological struggles, right? You don't know where Stuart is in this moment in time. You don't know where anybody is in this moment in time.
Yeah.
Has it been something which has just exacerbated a situation that he's in? Unless he speaks about it, unless he gives some insight, you're just guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. We wish him well, and we hope there is a way back into football because he's got so much to offer the game. Great to talk about football, the good side of it and the bad side of it as well. That's what the Journos is all about domestically and as we scour Europe and across the globe for good stories. That the only thing missing here was maybe a glass of water here and there and a couple of Southern Comforts and lemonade and 5 pints of beer for you if the Christmas party's anything to go by.
What Christmas party?
Yeah, exactly. We thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it too. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. And thank you to everyone for the podcast, for downloading it, the figures that we've received, and the compliments as well as the criticism. We take it all on the chin. Thank you for listening and watching.